Yeah, hi. This is Nate Fogel. I'm the contest manager for the 1989 Scale Masters Championships, and it's being held here at the Arrowhead Airport in St. Louis. And standing with me is Charlie Baker, the contest director. And we want to welcome everyone that is participating in this event. We've had 74 registered combatants here, if you want to call them combatants. But then again, we anticipate having the most successful Scale Masters Championship event that has occurred in its history of 10 years. And once again, we want to thank you, we want to welcome you, and wish everyone have a good time.
Welcome to the 1989 Scale Masters, the greatest scale contest anywhere in the world today. On behalf of Papa Wash Videos and myself, I'm Greg Namey. We're going to take you on a 90-minute tour of some of the best scale airplanes in the country today, both in the building aspect and the flying. So let's take a few minutes and get a good look at what you're going to see in the next 90 minutes or so.
I'd like to make an announcement.
The winner of the 1989 Scale Masters is Mr. Bob Violet with his F-86 Sabre. This kit, Bob Violet models, and if you'll notice, the airplane is absolutely gorgeous on takeoff. Did you notice the scale realism included in the landing gear? The aircraft really performs well and brings it in for a landing. We understand that Bob is using a gyro on the nose gear to assist him in his takeoffs and his landings due to the power behind this airplane. Absolutely gorgeous. Was Diego Lopez with his F-6F Hellcat. This airplane had a pretty good incident during the Masters. It ran into a Piper Cub, which we'll see later on. But this airplane, I believe, is from a Don Lean kit, and Diego does very, very well with it.
Burned it, huh? Burned it.
And coming in for a carrier landing is Diego Lopez with his F-6F Hellcat. Nicely done. Up next is Lee Rice from Texas. This airplane is a KI-100 Tony, a radial engine version of the KI-61 Tony. This kit was built by Lee Rice from Innovative Model Products Plans, and as you can see, is a very, very stable flyer. Here we're looking at an ME-109, built from a Dave Platt kit. The detailing on this is exceptional. In the air, the aerobatic and always popular Chipmunk. The Chipmunk, while diminished in popularity in the last few years, is starting to make a comeback, and you can see why the airplane just performs very, very well and realistically at that scale. This contestant, Mr. Mark Harrell from Tennessee, as we mentioned earlier on, had a run-in with Diego Lopez's F6F. With a true scale modeler, Mark had this airplane back in the air and flying again. And if you'll notice, Mark is one of the few people that fly a J3 Cub and make it look convincing. Let's take a look.
Had a misfortunate accident this morning where another airplane... Mr. Jim Carroll, please report to the announcement booth.
Job nicely done by Mark Harrell. This is an absolutely nice-looking airplane. And a congratulations and a pat on the back from the wife. Up next is Shane Kramer with his P-47. P-47s were quite popular this year at the Masters. There were a number of them entered. And if you'll take a look at Shane flying it, you'll see why. The airplane flies just great. He has no bad characteristics and even makes bad pilots look good. We're not saying Shane's a bad pilot. Shane's an excellent pilot. And he's an excellent builder, too, as evidenced by this airplane named Zombie. She's airborne, and look at the stability in this airplane. Tommy Weems brought his Curtiss Hawk 75, a prototype, from a scratch-built airplane that he built up from foam wings and fiberglass cowls and wheel pants. Tom comes from Hereford, Texas. He did an excellent job on this, and if anything I've noticed about Tommy in the last 3 or 4 Masters is he likes doing silver airplanes with wheel pants, no retracts, and he does a good job with them. Ed Newman, another Texan, brought his Newport 28C1. It's quarter scale from the Proctor kit. It's all fabric covered, made of ply, balsa, and spruce. Ed Newman is a good friend of mine. He's also a member of the 1/6th Air Force, to which I'm also a member of. I had done a heck of a job on this airplane. It looks really great.
Run a gear for me. Climbing cycle.
Calendar powered by a supercharger left down.
Next up is this absolutely beautiful AT-6. I'm not going to say a word about it. We'll let the master Chuck Fuller tell you about it himself. Warner had a chance to interview him during a break, and we're going to let you talk about it now.
The gentleman sitting next to me is Mr. Chuck Fuller from Salinas, California.
That's right.
And Chuck is a pilot of the AT-6, all-metal AT-6, or metal-covered AT-6. And Chuck, how do you achieve that kind of a finish covering it with real metal. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I'd like to kind of straighten out something. It's not really all metal. We try to simulate what the full-size airplane looks like, and of course the easiest way is the best way sometimes if it works out. All the flat surfaces are done with trim monocoat. That's one product that can be used for that. The compound curves present a different problem, and one of the materials that I like to use for the compound curves is this. It's a polished aluminum duct tape that's available at most hardware stores or lumber yards. I think sheet metal men use it sometimes to patch their ducts with, and some body and fender places use it. The reason I'm mentioning that is that I want you to know that most of these things are readily available in any local store. The aluminum polished tape has an adhesive on the back, and if you slowly form that around a compound curve, and carefully, you can go quite a little ways, and the compound covering will stay there and simulate polished aluminum pretty good, because it is aluminum. The monocoat, if it's a little bit too bright or you want a duller finish, you can use toothpaste or soda or something of that nature, or maybe Bon Ami, and see if that'll simulate what you're trying to do. Litho plate that you can get generally at printing shops, no cost or very little cost, and maybe a door panel or something like that out of the litho will add to the different textures of aluminum like you'll see on real airplanes. Plumbing and sheet metal shops have a dead soft aluminum that's about a 1/64 of an inch thick that will hand form, and it makes another suitable thing for hatch covers and so on. That pretty well covers it, and I think from there on you just trial and error like all of us modelers do, and after a while you get something you're kind of pleased with if you're lucky.
Thank you, Chuck, for taking time from your busy day here at the 1989 Scale Masters.
Well, enough talk. Let's just take a few minutes and look at this absolutely gorgeous airplane. If you'll notice, though, one thing you can say about metal airplanes once we get to see this fly is that a video camera usually attracts any aluminum on board. But for the next few minutes, let's just look at the details and scale this master has put on this airplane.
Wanted to get ready. Then Gary Wild to get ready on flight ready Lawrence Fargo.
Real shy, but.
Don't you want to get in and take it for a ride?
And for the builder, a Spitfire kit. All right. Aircraft at their field, which is on 3 Cornell Road, about a mile and a half from here. The following week.
Can you get any more realistic than that? Absolutely beautiful. You'd think you were at the Miami Air Show right about now. Now, just keep an eye on how a video camera will attract a metal airplane. Look out, Warner. Saved in the nick of time. Up next is a good friend of mine from out California way, is Austin Cletus. He brought himself a Dynaflight P-51. Austin used to fly a Piper Tomahawk, and this is quite a change for him. Austin is another one who really pays attention to detail, right down to the end numbers hidden underneath the elevator.
Cut.
To flight line number 1 and pick up some paperwork that was left. Never mind, we...
You give to the throttle. Oh, can we get the grass thing aircraft at Fort Still? And he goes with a 4-point roll. Sunday was the magnificent check. All right, here we have the
Very, very nice low pass. We'll be seeing a lot more jet entries at the Masters as years go by, as the technology catches up to the knowledge of the modelers. Here she comes.
walk. Beautiful touchdown. Give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ronnie Kemp from Blue Water for Washington.
Next up is my good buddy from over in Tampa, Dr. Bill McCauley. It seems that just before the Masters, I called Doc to see if he was about ready to get his Focke-Wulf 190 out and head on up to St. Louis. And that's when I found out he was just about ready to put the paint on it. Doc hadn't had much time on this airplane, but if you take a few minutes and watch him fly, you'll see why Doc McCauley has won the Nats once or twice and has always placed pretty high at the Masters. Just keep an eye on this P-40. Doc built this kit from Jerry Bates' plans of Mobile, Alabama. Very, very realistic looking P-40, one of the best I've ever seen. And as usual with Doc, he flies it well. Every maneuver is precise and dead on where it has to be. One of the better competitors that I've flown against, and when I say competitor, you are up against the odds when you fly against this guy. Yet, he's probably one of my best friends I've had since I've gotten this hobby. He's a heck of a gentleman from Tennessee.
Turn into the information booth. If you've lost a pair of sale in the raffle booth, hats are $5 each. We also have
Up next is my good friend Corvin Miller. Corvin is also from the west coast of Florida, just a few miles south of Doc McCauley. Corvin entered this, believe it or not, Royal kit from that he's probably rebuilt so many times it now qualifies as a scratch built. Corvin's another tough competitor from down in Florida who can really fly the pants off this airplane. Corvin and Doc and all the rest of the guys from down this end really make scale meets down in this part of Florida tough. And as you just saw from that landing, Corvin's no stranger to this Corsair. I think he knows it as well as he knows his own undershorts. Now here we have it. I've actually got a chance to get even with my boss. For those of you who don't know who this is Mr. Norm Goyer, the editor of RC Scale Modeler magazine. And he's taking close-up pictures of Art Johnson, Colonel Art Johnson's B-26. And one can only wonder, is he going to write something about this airplane, since the Colonel writes the scale column for RC Modeler. Only Norm knows for sure.
Wingspan kind of has a yellow, tighter looking nose.
Gene Barton is planning on kitting this Skyraider. If you'll notice the details on the landing gear, Gene does make some super landing gear for a lot of the kit companies and himself. And his attention to detail on this airplane is absolutely flawless. The wings actually fold up and down. And the airplane is very, very quite stable. So let's take a few minutes and let's watch Gene put this airplane through its paces.
And that'll be the end of Light 200. Got an OSFS.
This is our takeoff.
Another popular entry is the Cap 10, which is a very highly aerobatic airplane.
The aircraft is covered with buff, chrome, trim, rivets on that airplane.
Maybe we got some.
Okay.
Colored or cream and maroon, I can't quite see it all.
Your species, because your vehicles are parked.
Looks at this, it looks like biplanes have made a comeback. Ah, yes, here it is. Top Gun itself, the F-14. Dennis Crooks came all the way down from Illinois to compete. Had a mishap with his original F-14 that he entered in scale. However, with no problem, Dennis had a backup F-14. You might recall that Dennis is pretty popular with himself here, using folding wing Navy airplanes. I guess Dennis got a little bored with the folding wing mechanism only working on the ground. So he's got something a little faster, and as you're watching it fly, you'll notice that the wings do fold. And there you go. Let's take a few minutes and watch Dennis put this yellow F-14 through its paces. And that's not painted yellow, that's from Yellow Models.
Good Delta! All right, beautiful! Gets the nose up. Ladies and gentlemen, he says hello. Mr. Dennis Cook!
Another successful mission, applies the brakes, hits the throttle, and brings it back. You'll notice the team working there. That's his lovely wife, Linda, who goes all over the country with Dennis. She's his caller, and he's the only one I believe he'll trust to call the maneuvers for him. Dennis puts out a great calendar, too, by the way. If you're interested, it's from DC Aviation. Just check the magazines, and you can order your own. Up next is the Sig Morrissey Bravo, another popular kit that is gaining in popularity all the time. Dale Drew brings this Morrissey Bravo to the Scale Masters with a careful eye and attention toward detail. I even saw some scale dirt on that rear tire. Dale is, I believe, from Indiana, and he spent a lot of time putting this airplane together, and I was there when he qualified with this airplane at the qualifier held for the first time in Louisville. That contest was put on by a good friend of mine by the name of Phil Renfro. Keep an eye open if you're up in that part of the world around August. Phil will have his second-year qualifier coming up this year, and it's usually held in August. And he does a very good job with it, just as this Dale has done landing this airplane. Up next is another civilian aircraft. Take a look at the details here. You'll notice that it has luggage in the luggage compartment and wires on the microphone. This absolutely gorgeous airplane is built by Wayne Seward from up in Minneapolis. Wayne and I have competed against each other a couple of times at the Masters and once at the Nats. He won the Nats in Tidewater, Virginia in 1988, I believe, with this airplane, and well-deservedly so. Wayne offers a semi-kit of this. If you're interested, just check the model magazines and look for the Turbo Mooney. Up next, another Floridian with a fighter. It's Frank Thomas from up in the panhandle of Florida. Frank worked very, very hard converting a Platt FW190A model into this excellent flying D9, and if you know anything, I sure do like D9s. Another good friend of mine from Florida is Frank Tiano. Frank scratch-built this Tony. He took 4th place with it at the Masters last year, and this year I think he finished around 21 or 22. It's an excellent flying airplane, has all the great lines, and it's the inline engine. It's the only inline engine Japanese airplane ever built, and it's the counterpart to the KI-100 you saw earlier on being flown by Lee Rice. So let's take a few minutes and we'll watch this Tony go through the sky and make you think you're looking up from an aircraft carrier somewhere in the South Pacific.
cockpit and instrumentation, and it has a push-pull counterbalance aileron, scale hinges, and it was painted with
Line 3.
Frank, like I said earlier, has scratch built this, but if you are interested, Innovative Model Products has a plan for this. It's in the form of the KI-61, or you can build the radial engine version I talked about earlier. Right now, which is a great tradition at the Masters, is usually during lunchtime they have everyone bring their models out to the runway and let the spectators come out and get a close look. And anyone that wants to take pictures, welcome to do it. Aha, my good friend from Texas with this Sky Pirate. This Sky Pirate has been at the Nats, it's been at the Tennessee Qualifier, it's been all over the place, and there were only 2 of these built in real life by Grumman that was supposed to take the place of the Helldiver, and they only made 2, like I said, and it's being flown capably by a good friend of mine from Texas by the name of Lawrence Harville. He's from Hearst, Texas. His airplane is being flown on an OS-61, weighs 11 pounds and 7.5 ounces. Uses a Futaba 8-channel, and it was the largest single-engine airplane ever built. It had a 70-foot wingspan, and Lawrence can fly it. He's a tough competitor and one heck of a good announcer. If you were at the Masters last year, he kept you in stitches the whole time. And he usually does his excellent job of bringing it in for a landing. Good job, Lawrence. I hope you gave that guy $1 for saving his flight box. Up next, another great civilian aircraft is the Citabria Decathlon, and we'll just watch it fly for a few minutes.
a lot of power.
And another pretty landing. The one thing we've noticed at the scale meets in the last 5-6 years is the flying has improved so gracious that people just don't come to watch crashes anymore. They come to see the details. And speaking of details, I'm not even going to get into it on Dick Hansen's Jenny. I'm going to see if Warner can sneak over to the sidelines and grab him and sit him down and talk to him about this airplane.
Here with Dick Hansen from Portland, Oregon. Dick is the owner of the beautiful Jenny. And Dick, can you tell me, you've been flying this a lot of years. Can you tell me a little bit about the Jenny?
Well, Warner, the Jenny is about 3 years old. It's one of the prototype production kits from Proctor Enterprises in Aurora, Oregon. We had one other local fellow, Dave Rawlings, built one. And so the fly's real good. We've had good luck with it. And all the contests we've flown in, from West Coast to East Coast, which is about 6 or 7 major contests, we've never had an engine failure once. We've finished every event. It's an Enya 80. We're very proud of it. And we're running cool power, 4-stroke fuel, 15%. Dick Heining, who owns Proctor Enterprises now, is dedicated to quality scale World War I aircraft. And he's talked me into joining him in a consultant way. And so I'll be with him about 2 days a week now, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. And we're having a great time here in St. Louis. And with dedicated men like you, Werner, we can go home afterwards and sit in a nice front room and watch our beautiful airplanes fly over the United States. We love it.
Thank you, Dick. Is there anybody else you want to give a plug to?
Well, let's see. I think Frank Tano needs a plug for Top Gun. Great job. And he's going to move it to Mesa, Arizona next April. It's going to be another great contest, and you'll be there, I'm sure. See you guys there.
Thank you, Dick.
You're welcome.
Championship. My name is Dr. and I'm honorary member of the St. Louis Radio Control Flying Association. But no, that's beside the point. We're going to have a slight preparation period here as I hear that these jet aircraft can only go fast. Well, they can also go slow, ladies and gentlemen, and Bob Violet gives his routine slow flight demonstration. The number of aircraft is taking off right now. Running jump from Blue Water, Washington. up and rock, turn and burn. The CB goes into 52-10. Back to the...
And now taking off from the grass area is the Curtis Jenny and reciprocating it.
And just take a look at this lineup of Proctor kits. The one in the back belongs to a super competitor, Bob Hanft. Bob, who qualified to represent the United States in the FAI championships this next September coming over in Poland, is entered this Proctor Newport done up in 1920 U.S. Navy markings. Bob is a super competitor, and boy, can he fly a biplane. He had, for a long time, campaigned a Fokker D-8, which was a World War I single-wing fighter plane, and Bob flew the pants off of that, done National Geographic specials, and Bob just really puts his heart and soul into this hobby. So take a few minutes and let's watch him fly this absolutely beautiful Newport around, and Bob will fly it with authority.
Pacer Technologies are the manufacturers.
Good luck, Bob, with the FAI championships coming up. We wish you well. No, this doesn't belong to Kent Walters. Actually, I don't know who it belongs to, but it's an absolutely gorgeous Douglas Dauntless from World War II, the dive bomber and the hero of the Battle of Midway.
Get ready, white line.
On the other side of the white line down the center, unless you are ready to take your plane off. This is a safety.
This gorgeous piece of work belongs to David Pape from Alberta, Canada. David has been to the Masters with it now, if I remember right, for the past 3 years. And if you'll notice one thing about this airplane is the engine sticking out of that cowl. David assembled that himself. That is, he actually built the plane, and then he went ahead and built the engine, and both work flawlessly for David. David did an excellent job on this flight, as evidenced by his landing, and he's a super competitor also. Biplanes are at the Masters and doing well. This Tiger Moth is another one of the biplanes entered from pre-World War II days, and it's being flown well. It seems with the larger sizes in airplanes, biplanes have come back into the fold due to the fact that they're not as susceptible to the winds and the adverse weather conditions that in a smaller airplane with two wings normally would be. And speaking of biplanes, Bill Brucken from Bellbrook, Ohio, brought this very pretty Pitts S1S. It's a third scale. It's all built up from wood, balsa, light pine, and spruce. He did scratch build it, and he designed it exactly from the Pitts factory drawings. So let's watch it fly around with the smoke coming out the tail.
Of different types throughout the year. And although this is a national contest, several pilots have come from other countries. Scale Masters.
Nice job by Bill Brucken. Oh, here it is. Dan Sawtulski from Altona, Manitoba, Canada, brings this T-34C from RT Associates kit. It's the same kit that I flew at the 1987 Masters, and he has done it up in the, I believe it's the Argentinian Air Force colors. A World War I Eindecker steps up next, so let's take a look and see how it does.
That was interesting. In front of us now, the Fokker Eindecker, doing another touch-and-go maneuver. Program sound. Again, this is another one of our aircraft that has no tails.
Next week that I will. As soon as I get home, I'll mail it to you.
Come up here and let us sell them out. Microphone. So...
Scott Foster, all the way from Middlebury, Vermont, brought this B-17 from a highly modified Westcraft kit, which means it has a fiberglass fuselage and a three-piece foam wing. Also used is balsa and plywood. Scott used this airplane to convert it to a B-17G. If you'll notice the excellent attention to detail and all the rivets, and if you'll notice the one thing that's very distinctive about this B-17 is the nose. Because if you're sitting there wondering, boy, what looks different on this B-17, I'll give it away for you. Just take a look at the nose. It's in high visibility orange on the wings, and Scott used some Dan Parsons cloth and some hobby epoxy paint and shook the box and put 4 OS 48.5 FSRs on there. And actually, he's written down on this piece of paper here that this has over 100,000 glue drops to simulate his rivets using a toothpick. Scott, good luck, buddy, because this is absolutely a super job on a very complex aircraft. So let's take a few seconds and watch Scott put it through its paces.
Ladies and gentlemen, the B-17 is...
Scott brings the B-17G safely home. Up next, Steve Ort from East Peoria, Illinois, brought a Staggerwing Beach, which carries a fiberglass fuselage, foam wings, and stabs. It's built from a Byron kit, and he's painted it with K&B super epoxy paint, and any fiberglass work he's done, he's used plain old fiberglass cloth and epoxy resin. The engine he's got in here is a Super Tiger 3000 swinging an 18.8 prop. He's using a Futaba 6-channel radio.
They are located at the blue down the runway back to the pit area.
Oh, yeah.
And the Bucher now, landing very nicely in the grass. Ladies and gentlemen, from the other side of the fence. Last call
for... Shailesh Patel from out California way brought this absolutely gorgeous F4 Phantom. Take a look at the detail on this airplane. If you don't think that this was an artist's nightmare to paint, yet it has been executed perfectly on this airplane. Shailesh spent a lot of time on this, and I give him a lot of credit. Absolutely beautiful airplane. Let's take a couple of seconds and just look at the detail on this F4. I believe this was the Air Force's bicentennial aircraft that they used to show the F4 around the country, and Shailesh has faithfully, very faithfully produced this airplane for you and himself. A very difficult subject made to look easy for the average viewer. But I can assure you this, I don't think I would have spent the time to do this highly complex paint job.
I have your attention, please. I have your attention, please. Which may take 3-4 hours.
Now we're back to the World War II fighters, which never seem to cease in popularity. This, I believe, is a Platt ME-109 on takeoff roll. Something you don't see every day. It's a Russian Yak, 18 PS. It's been built by Don Hatch from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I believe it started from a SIG kit, and it is a SIG kit. It's painted and covered in super coverite and painted in dope and hobby epoxy paint. Uses a Weber 60 for power and swinging an 11.75 prop. He's using a Kraft 7-channel radio. And Don has said he has homemade landing gear, and I believe him. So let's take a few seconds and watch this airplane fly. Warner, after we look at this Yellow Products SR-71, we're going to give the mic to you.
To Jim Terrell from Anchorage, Alaska, and he's the owner of this beautiful short sky van. Jim, tell me, did you build this aircraft from a kit or is it scratch built?
Well, actually, it's about half and half. It started out as a kit, but the dimensions were so incorrect that I threw it away and started all over again with a set of factory drawings. But a kit was actually responsible for getting me the idea to start to build it. I obtained factory drawings from Belfast, Ireland, from Short Brothers, and they were super cooperative, and I sat down and laid the dimensions out on my workbench and started all over again. So that's basically how it came about.
No problem.
You never... I'll up the tire, because my mind is not working.
Understand about your aircraft is that it has reversing props. How did you do that?
Well, I bought a set of props in Sweden that are not available in the U.S. any longer, and I machined part of the prop hub and bought the rest, and I used 2 Futaba quarter-scale servos inside the cabin here to operate the swash plates on the props, and they work very nicely. It takes a tremendous amount of torque to move them, so I use the big quarter-scale servos with 100 and some odd inch-ounces of torque, and they have a mechanical advantage, so they break over center so that they lock in the full position forward and backward.
Jim, and in addition to having the reversing props to slow the airplane down, I understand that you also have working brakes as well as hydraulic shocks on the wheel.
That's true. I have drum brakes that I made on my lathe and milling machine. They're operated by a quarter-scale servo, And the nose gear and the main gears both have operating hydraulic shock absorbers. The main gear has trailing link suspension with the shock absorbers, and the nose gear has the oleo strut, and it works really good. About the only kind of landings I've made so far are bad, so the shocks have worked very nicely so far.
Notice that all your doors seem to be operational. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, you always have to have some place that you can put the switches and the charging jack, so I decided that I'd put them where I could get to them with the doors. And the cabin doors open, I think we used to call them suicide doors. The doors open from the front and are hinged at the back, and the cargo door is servo operated and can be lowered or raised during flight. And the doors have latches, so they'll stay hopefully shut during flight. And that I have my charging plug and my on-off switch located in the cabin behind the doors.
Well, Jim, thank you very much, and I hope when we're all done here and you've flown your aircraft to the best of your abilities, that you have a good trip back to Alaska. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope we'll make it back.
Fighters are back. This absolutely beautiful Typhoon was built by Wayne Knight. Wayne's just up the street from me down in South Florida. I've been trying to get him to get me a set of the plans for this airplane. Not only is it fly as well as it looks, it seems to land and as well as it looks, and Wayne does a great job of flying it. Like I said, Wayne's from South Florida. I'm sure he traveled up there with the Colonel. Next up, Jeff Micko with his P-47. Big Mick comes every year to the Masters with this airplane, and this year it did quite well. The detail on this airplane is superb. It's built from Roy Valancourt plans. Jeff hails from up Minnesota way, so by the time he gets to see this tape, he'll be sitting in, snowed in, and hope he gets to enjoy it. So we'll take a couple of minutes, and we'll watch Jeff fly this thing around the sky. A nice rendition of a nice airplane by Jeff Micko.
The announcer's booth.
The one thing I can say about Jeff is he's got a great rendition of the silver on this airplane, and it's all done with hobby epoxy and K&B paint. He really simulates the aluminum quite well without using any aluminum. So all you scale modelers out there, take a look at this airplane and you'll know it can be done. Charlie Chambers entered this FA-18 from the Yellow Model Products kit. However, technical problems prevented Charlie from flying it. But just take a look at the paint job on this airplane. And if I'm not mistaken, I know for a fact it took Charlie only 8 months to build and get this thing ready to go. I believe this is the prototype kit for the Yellow Model Products F-15 coming up. And once again, the landing gear details and everything else seem to be super. Let's take a couple seconds and watch this fly.
He is also vice
The pilot of this aircraft seemed to look like Bill Harris from up St. Louis way, and he seems to be flying it quite well. The airplane has good speed, and it looks like it just took some sort of a radio hit and recovered nicely. Bill, I hope you had some stitches back home for that underwear. Bring it home, Billy. Nicely done. But I guess if you've got Dennis Crooks calling for you, what else could go wrong? Up next is Tom. A super rendition of a World War I fighter comes to us from Thomas Kozlowski from Clinton, Massachusetts. Tom All scratch-built this 1/4 scale World War I Fokker D7 from actually going to the Champlin Fighter Museum out in California. He's used every type of building material available, it seems like, of spruce, ply, balsa, brass, steel, fiberglass, and plastic. And as I said, he completely scratch-built it. He won the Pilot's Choice Award with it at the Masters that was held in Fort Knox, Kentucky a year ago. And let's just take a second and watch this airplane go through it. It's an absolutely beautiful airplane. He's flying it with a PCM-4, and he's using a Futaba PCM and only using 4 channels. It took him 2,200 hours to build this airplane. And he, like I said, he flew all the way to Arizona just to study the full-size aircraft. Here we have a flight demo, I believe, of Bob Violet's Violet. I believe I can almost make it out. It's going so fast, I believe it to be a Viper. Bob Violet was the winner of this contest, as I stated earlier, and he manufactures a fine, fine line of jet kits. Bob is also from Florida, and if you want to get one of these, just look him up in the magazine and give him a phone call. The performance is out of sight.
Go. Bob also has the F-16. Oh, he does this all the time. Low power.
I believe this airplane is being powered with the KBB-82 with a Viajet system inside the Viper. And one thing the Masters does every year is nothing gets boring. If there's any lull in the competition, they go right into showing you the new things. Up next, we have Bill Miller from Tennessee with his Royal DC-3. I've competed against this airplane, and Bill will give you fits flying it. Bill is in life, a full-time airline pilot. He flies jets for a living. I believe he started his flying career commercially in the DC-3. So take a few seconds here and watch Bill fly this airplane. It's very realistic looking for such a small-sized airplane compared to the other entries in the contest.
Right now on his low-speed, low-altitude path. That's the DC-3 now on a nice touchdown. See his flaps extended. Again, this aircraft is painted to represent the full-scale airplane flown by the EAATC. I like the way the pilot has flown his model. I'm sure he would be glad to hear the applause.
Roy Valancourt brought this, I believe it's a Hawker Hurricane Mark I from his own plans. The airplane is a very big aircraft. I believe it spans 96 inches, and it's very, very realistic in flight. So we'll just sit back, relax, and enjoy Roy Valancourt flying this Hurricane. Interesting thing that he put on his sheet here in front of me is that the aircraft has been painted with Benjamin Moore house paint. I'm afraid if I had done something like that, I'd always be asked what size roller I put my paint on with. But if you got a close look at this, it's hard to tell. But he's done a fine, fine job of getting the finish that he's got, and he's got a superb flying airplane. So as I said, sit back and relax and take a watch.
Taking off right now is another famous warbird, the Hawker Hurricane.
The missed approach was very, very realistic, and here comes the landing right down the center. Roy Valancourt. Roy has the plans for this, and once again, it's in the magazines.
Gene is here in St. Louis today from Garden Grove scoring booth. Judy Mullen, you're requested at the scoring. Today.
Wayne Jones brought this Wendell Williams racer. It's quarter scale, built up from balsa wood, and it's covered in coverite. He even designed his own plans for this. And he's copied it after the real aircraft that's in Cleveland. He's flying it on a Super Tiger 2500 with a Zinger 18610 prop, using a Futaba PCM 1024 7-channel and using 4 servos. The wingspan on this airplane is 78 inches, and it weighs 17½ pounds.
Yes.
Jack Buckley from Massachusetts brought this Cap 10 from the Yellow Model Products kit. The original designer of this airplane, I believe, was Ken Coleman from up in Toronto, Canada. Ken had this airplane for quite a while and then I believe sold the rights to Yellow Models. Jack has done a great job, right down to putting a tiny magazine on the front seat in the cockpit. Super job. And if you'll watch, he flies it just like you'd see it flown in the air show.
Lopez, please report to Sightline 3.
And if memory serves me right here we have Dennis Kane flying a Navy Fleet Concept biplane. Dennis has been to the Masters for 2 years running now. And here it is, Bob Fiorenzi, Mr. Top Gun himself, with a gorgeous FA-18 Hornet designed by Yellow Model Products. If you've anything to do with jets, you know who this guy is. And just take a look at this landing gear. Absolutely just like the real one. Bob has his own hobby shop now up in Orlando, Florida, called Fiorenzi's Hobbies, I believe. And if you're interested in getting one of these aircraft for yourself, I think you could give him a call, or Yellow Model Products, and they'll put you in the seat and let you take it around yourself. The detail on this airplane is exquisite. And the way Bob painted this is absolutely gorgeous. So just take a look and watch this thing fly and get excited enough, maybe you're going to try some jets yourself. Keep an eye on these landing gear when he lands and watch him put the brakes on. Nice job, Bob. Full stop. Last year, Bob took both Top Gun and Masters trophies. Bob Underwood's Hypervipe. This airplane's been around for a very, very long time. Bob does a good job with it. It has automatic opening doors and a full cockpit inside. Bob is the technical director for the AMA, so if you have any technical questions along the line of scale, you can give him a call there. My good friend Bill Carper from Jackson, Ohio, brought back Little Demon. This is from a Burt Baker kit, and this airplane and my Focke-Wulf have gone at it so many times at contests in the Southeast, it's not funny. Bill is probably the best P-47 jock I have ever seen. And if you'll just watch him fly this, you'll see why. We just have so much fun when we end up at a contest together, and Bill's got a repertoire of jokes that you wouldn't believe. If you ever want some good material and want to have some great stories, give him a call. And if you want to learn how to build a P-47, I'm sure he'll help you with that too.
Aircraft, engine and radio.
Charlie Nelson, another one from New England, brought this well-flown Wacko cabin pipe. Charlie's had this airplane as long as I can remember going to the Masters. And Charlie's one of them modelers that you can't tell anything to, because Charlie's going to build and fly what he likes. He doesn't do this for anyone but himself, and I'm sure he loves this airplane dearly. He's done an excellent job with it, and he flies it well, and for as many times as I've seen it fly, it looks just as good today as when I first saw it back in 1985. Danny Melnick, another South Florida boy, has come to the Masters. No, he's not going to compete, but to watch this kid fly a helicopter is absolutely unbelievable. Danny, in this month's, the October issue of RC Modeler, has even designed some maneuvers for this that he used at the Nats this summer. So let's sit back and watch Dan Melnick fly this airplane. It's airplane, nothing. That's a helicopter, guy. Those wings are moving. So take a watch and enjoy yourself, and just be glad that you don't have to go out and do this for a living.
As he's off. And, you know, I think Dan loves his airplane too, because he just likes to look at it right in space. As he does a beautiful pirouette.
Yeah, Danny is sponsored by Hobby Dynamics. They put him through this all over the country. Danny gets to do this 100 times a year. And just recently at the West Palm Beach Hobby Expo, their first annual down there, I got to see Danny in person. And believe it or not, Danny doesn't live but maybe 3 or 4 miles from me. And he comes out and he does all these routines just to be asked to do it. He's come out to the Broward County Radio Control Association for their charity air shows and put on all kinds of shows for them. And this is the guy to watch, because I think we're going to see Danny in the winner's circle in the helicopter division for a long time. So I'm going to shut up and just watch what this kid does with a helicopter.
As he does a Hulk Hogan somersault there with a roll. Rotary aircraft, RC rotary aircraft have just come a long way. I mean, he's been flying helicopters for 7 years.
Run.
Now, when he goes inverted, as like right then, he does not use any switches at all, as he does the big moves.
For all pilots, if you have your pilot sergeant selections ready, please bring them up to the announcement table ready.
He had a very nice touchdown.
The Colonel brought his B-26 all the way from Delray Beach, Florida. Take a look at these doors open when he's going to drop a bomb. It's absolutely amazing. Colonel Art Johnson actually flew in a B-26 for many, many missions. I believe it was this airplane, not this airplane, but the real one that he copied, that Art flew in. Art and I have spent, quite a few times at lunches talking about this airplane, and he entered it this summer at the Nats in Virginia Beach. Last summer at Virginia Beach, and he had it at Top Gun this year, and now he's got it at the Masters. Just look at the detail. I mean, those landing gear you just saw were homemade by the Colonel himself. So let's peruse this aircraft, take a look at the detail, and watch a master builder and flyer go through his paces.
Everyone is not associated with the aircraft flying or the scoot back from the flight line. Up there in that
Gorgeous landing, Colonel. Probably just as smooth as they were when you flew them. Jack Dorman, another Florida flyer, brought a P-40. These also was built from Jerry Bates' plans from Mobile, Alabama. Keep an eye on Jack on this takeoff, because not only does this airplane fly well, it looks well in the sky. So, and if you got a chance to look, he's got a cute little caricature on the tail of this airplane. I think in Jack's own words, it's a caricature of a little Oriental boy relieving himself on the rising sun. Another Blanca Decathlon taking off, flying in. Okay, we noticed the winds are a little trickier today than they were in the past, as evidenced by that clump of clutter blowing across the runway. Neil Snodgrass. Believe it or not, this airplane started life as a Piper Cub, a Super Cub to be exact, that I believe in real life had suffered some sort of mishap and was converted into this aerobatic specialty. Neil took second place at Top Gun with this airplane, and has finished in so many contests in the top 10 that I won't even begin to name them off here. The airplane is unbelievably great and stable as a flyer, and really hard to believe that the original airplane was a PA-18 Super Cub that had sustained some damage and was converted into this. So let's sit back and watch this one fly too, as Neil puts it through its paces.
We're just 10 minutes away from halftime showtime at 12 o'clock noon today.
The trophy. It's easy to see why Neil always takes a trophy when he enters this airplane in a contest. So to all you guys out there that don't think civilian airplanes have a chance, take a look at Neil's. Up next, we have a Ryan Fireball. Believe it or not, this is a ducted fan aircraft with a propeller in the front. Hal Parenti is the creator and designer of this model. Very unique. I believe there were only 2 of them built, and you can get them in a variety of colors, either navy blue or dark blue. And Hal does a super job of flying the airplane. I believe, and if I'm not mistaken, he finished in second place at the Masters with this aircraft. Another super job by Hal Parenti with the Ryan Fireball. If you take a look, one unique feature on this airplane is the gear doors are toward the exterior or the tips of the wings. The gears sort of retract in the opposite direction in the same fashion as a Spitfire or ME-109. Presentation. For 71 people who have traveled this far, there's got to be some sort of reward, and we're going on to it now. This man here is Harris Lee, the founder, producer, originator, and head chief in charge of the Masters. And on to the trophies. Neil Snodgrass takes home another one with his specially redesigned Piper Cub into an aerobatic mid-wing fashioned airplane. That's in 10th place. Corbin Miller, Sarasota, Florida, walks off with 9th place trophy for his F4U Corsair. Our 8th place finisher, Mr. Bob Ham. Bob will represent us in true American form at the FAIs in Poland coming up in one more year to be exact. Nice job, Bob. Bob Fiorenzi from Central Florida walks off with 7th place at the 1989 Scale Masters with his FA-18 Hornet. Bill Seltzer, 6th place with the functional wing warping Eindecker. Bill Miller from Tennessee, the DC-3, takes home a trophy in 5th place. Diego Lopez from the west coast of the United States out in California takes home 4th place trophies with his F6F Hellcat. Bill Carper from Ohio takes 3rd place with his Burt Baker design P-47. Mr. Hal Parenti walks off with 2nd place and a Futaba radio for his Ryan Fireball. The moment we've all been waiting for, Mr. Bob Violet takes off with 1st place for his F-86 Sabre jet that can go straight up. Nice job of flying, Bob, and super nice job of building. Last but not least, the best trophy of the meet as far as I'm concerned, Being Last Sucks, originally created by the man you see here, Frank Piano. Some great names on that shirt. This year it goes to Mr. Don Barton, this happens to be the dad of Gene Barton, who had the magnificent Sky Raider. And as I've said in the past, it's better to come and finish last with the best than not to have come at all. So I guess we'll turn it over to Warner and myself.
And with me, I have Mr. Greg Namey. Greg, what did you think of the Scale Masters this year?
Well, for the first time, I've got to watch 4 days of it as a spectator, and I got to see a lot of things I've never seen before. It was one heck of a good time in a beautiful city, beautiful weather, and the airplanes here are just beautiful. So, just as always, Prop Wash Videos, myself and Warner will be at the Scale Masters next year, wherever it's going to be. And now for all these guys here, they've got the cleanup and the drive home. So we'll see you next year. And thanks a lot, Warner.
Thanks, Greg. We'll see you next year, buddy.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.